the book, Dr. Patrick Heller, Dr. Thomas Isaac, and Nikhil.
Please. What are you supposed to be? Welcome.
Yes. I request Professor Praveena to give the welcome address.
So good afternoon to you all. I'm here on behalf of our director, who unfortunately has got stuck in Delhi because of the fog. He couldn't get back on time. He intended to be here. But I'm really delighted to welcome you all to this really important panel discussion with such eminent speakers on the panel. I don't think any of them require an introduction here, but I just want to say a few words about the moment we are in before I yield. And I'm not going to be thinking about all the facets of the election that we've just come through, but what I thought was interesting for this whole question of participatory democracy was the number of Kudumbashree women, Asha workers, Harita Karma Sena workers who actually contested, and I'm sure many of them have won this election. That really, I think, is an indicator of the kind of participatory democracy that we're seeing here. Perhaps, you know, in a place where this whole movement, one of the places where this movement started. And I also want to refer to a panel discussion we had here earlier this year on gender and work. And we had two eminent panelists, one who was a representative of the ASHA workers' strike that was going on at that point. And the other was from the cinema, women in cinema collectives, very different kinds of women, and yet women who are struggling, who are speaking with the kind of spaces that democracy has opened up for us, speaking about equality, justice, and the right to work and to be considered or to be recognized as workers. I think that's something, that's a space that has opened up and that women in Kerala are making their own, and many other sections of society who've been marginalized hitherto. So with those words, I will once again reiterate that it's such a delight and pleasure to welcome you all, and I give the stage over to Mr. Vijayanam. Thank you.
Screening of the video by Suchi Pande, who is a co-editor of both the volumes.
Maybe release the books before that, Mr. Vijayanam, or should we do it afterwards? No, there was a question, so I left it there. Did we do it now or after? Afterwards? After Suchi? Yeah, no, after Suchi.
Yeah, I think fix it up.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to join you virtually for the release of these important and prescient volumes on unpacking participatory democracy. I would like to thank all of our contributors, our co-authors. I have learned a great deal from your experiences and perspectives on unpacking participatory democracy. Thank you for your patience throughout the process. I would also like to thank the Institute for the Study of International Development at McGill University and the Institute of Management and Governance in Kerala, where we hosted 2 workshops on unpacking participatory democracy over the course of 2016-2017. Some of you may know that Ava was also professor of practice in global governance at the Institute for the Study of International Development at McGill University in 2016. As ever, I am grateful for the extensive support of the Sathis from the School for Democracy, the Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan, and the National Campaign for People's Right to Information. Many thanks are also due to Sabakoli Dave for helping Ava and me coordinate several aspects of these edited volumes. We are also thankful to Proditi Banerjee and Nilanjana Majumdar from Orient Black Swan for their patience and diligence and all their hard work in helping us put out these edited volumes. Finally, it has been a great honor to work alongside Ava for so many years, and especially on these edited volumes. I've been very fortunate to be on the front lines with her, Shankarji, and Nikhil, and all the MKSS Sathis in our ongoing struggles to redefine conventional power by foregrounding the logic and truth of the oppressed and the marginalized. Participatory democracy is integral to the work that MKSS has been engaged in for decades. The continuous and ongoing engagement of ordinary people beyond the vote through dialogue, sangharsh, and dissent is what bolsters representative democracy, while simultaneously protecting and upholding constitutional rights of the marginalized and the oppressed. With these words, I wish you all the best with the release of these volumes and for what I know will be a fascinating conversation with Professor Heller, Dr. Isaac, and Mr. Vijay Anand. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Suchi. Thanks a lot. Now I request Aruna ma'am to release the book, introduce and release the book.
I request all the participants to please take those 2 books onto your bag. Is it together? So there are 2 volumes in those bags. There's one is called Participatory Democracy, Unpacking Participatory Democracy from Theory to Practice. And the other volume is called Practice to Theory. So there are 2 volumes. They look rather identical, but they are 2 different volumes. Would you like to hold them up? For a photograph, would you like to stand up, please? There is it. Thank you.
People is showing from over there.
That's nice. As you all know, I'm actually a social activist and most known for fighting with very poor people on the streets. So you might wonder what I keep doing, producing books and coming to book reviews and coming to launches and talking about books. But the fact is that theory and practice are very closely interlinked. And if we don't understand that, then both theory and practice suffer. So the question is, of course, what was first, the egg or the chicken? Was it theory or practice? The practitioners will say it is practice, because if Newton hadn't seen the apple fall, he would have never wondered why. But the theorists will say that if he hadn't told the world why the apple fell, it would have been an individual incident. So it's an interesting dialectic that goes on between theory and practice for a long time. And today I see many of you who are there in Trivandrum during the practice to theory workshop. I see Jyoti, I see AB, I see Katyayani, and there's Vipul looking from behind me. And there may be other friends here whom I haven't identified. I have beside me Professor Patrick Heller, who was in Montreal. And I have beside me Dr. Thomas Isaac, who was in Trivandrum, and Mr. Vijayanand, who was also in Trivandrum. So let me tell you why Trivandrum and why the other place. Because I want to say tell you a little bit about the background to it. One day I got a letter when I was sitting in my village hut in Devdungri from McGill, from the Institute of Social, from ISID McGill, asking me whether I'd like to go there to be professor of practice for a term. And I thought, good Lord, I've never talked for a long time. I've never thought theoretically like that for a long time, never prepared courses. I've never prepared reading material. How will I do it? So we had, as usual in MKSs, we had a conclave and they said, you just must go. So you're now aging. So it's a good time to reflect. So it's best you go and talk about what you've learned and let's see what comes out of it. So the interesting thing is that the making of the syllabus or even the course was a collective effort. So many friends who both taught and who are listeners and participants in campaigns all contributed to what should go into the course. The course was designed. It was sent to McGill. They accepted the course. And of course, the 13-week course began. But I had a very interesting experience in class because my class touched base with India in every class. Every class, all the people who attended the class touched base with India. So in one of them, there was Northi, my Dalit friend who is a worker, also became Sarpanch, who also has learned how to use the computer. She's quite a phenomenon. Coming and speaking in her broken Hindi, and we translating why participatory democracy is so important for both theory and practice. Because if you don't know people like Northi and what they face as a woman, as a Dalit, as a person who aspires to be a Sarpanch, then we don't know what we are planning in terms of policy and law. In the course of this, of course, extraordinary understanding grew between my class and myself. I had 23 people in the class, which was the maximum allowed. And they were very young. They were from different backgrounds, many working class women, some women who were from better off families, some from the US and mostly from Canada, but many from India who had either migrated to Canada or were working there, and some black women as well. So it's a very interesting class because all kinds of sundry experiences came together and we built from that sharing of these experiences. I'm sure a different kind of theory came into practice and a different kind of practice went into wherever they went to theorize. But under the contract, I had to hold 2 seminars. I had to hold 1 seminar and they gave me a very, very handsome allowance. So I thought that instead of having 1 seminar, we thought, the MKSs and I thought, that instead of having 1 seminar, why not have 2? We are talking about participatory democracy, unpacking participatory democracy. So we're talking about unpacking participatory democracy, the third world, the developing world, however you call it, has so much to offer. So we went and told the department that we would like to have 1 seminar in Montreal and the other in Trivandrum. And they agreed. So before I went to Montreal to teach, I came here and met the chief minister and said, would you be willing to have your government participate in holding a workshop, a seminar for people who will come from all over India, probably some parts of South and Southeast Asia, and maybe a few from the West as well, to talk about participatory democracy and see how we have done the people's plan. Because for me, it has been one of the most important learnings that the MKSS has had, is about the drafting and the implementation of the people's plan and how participatory democracy has worked to a very large degree in Kerala. But of course, there are issues with it. I'm not saying it's a panacea for all evils, but it's a great thing. If you go to the rest of India, you know how much has been achieved because of this. So we felt we should come and it happened. So in Montreal, we had Patrick, we had John Harris, we had several others. I'm not going to read through the list, but we had very eminent people from Harvard, from MIT, we had people from Brown, we had all kinds of very big universities. Patrick is from Brown, and everyone said to me, how are they coming to this seminar organized by you? They thought I was just an activist, and why are these very big names coming to this meeting? I said, it's not me calling, it's the rights-based laws that are calling, because there have been phenomenal achievements in India of people making laws with Parliament and interacting with Parliament during the formation of the laws. So these two seminars then were very rich. In Montreal, we had 30 people, and we spent 2/3 of the money allocated for it. With 1/3 of the amount that was allocated for it in the budget, in Kerala, we had 150 people in that seminar. We had people from everywhere, activists, teachers, philosophers, activists of all sorts, commissioners of information, users of information, Manrega workers, social audit. I mean, you name it, and we had the lot there. And of course, so many of our friends here who represent various disciplines. And it was interesting because if Norati came as a sarpanch, ex-sarpanch of a panchayat in Rajasthan, we also had Gopal Gandhi, who had been ex-governor of West Bengal. And the conversations between them were very enlightening because you had many conversations. It was not just one kind of conversation, and that's what democracy is all about. Shiv Vishwanathan, who also came to the Kerala workshop seminar, he wandered around IMG, which gave us its premises free, and we owe a big thanks to IMG, as Suchi said. And there, in the middle of all this, Shiv was astounded. So one day he met us all for breakfast, and he said, "This is an intellectual commons, and we must record these conversations." That seeded the idea of these books. So we had people from Tata Institute, and Professor Parasuraman attended the seminar in Montreal, and he sent his staff here. Of course, now he's no longer alive. He sent his staff and his students here, who then did the minuting. And my class in Montreal did the minuting in Montreal. Together, there was so much rich material that we decided that we should turn it into some kind of reading material for posterity to read and understand. And it so happened that at that time, Orient Black Swan approached me and said, would you like to do a book for us? So I said, I haven't got any title in mind, but supposing, it just struck me. I said, supposing we bring out a book called Unpacking Participatory Democracy, would you be interested? And it would contain the matter. That's not mine, I'll just edit it. But we'll have matter from all the friends who attended the two workshops. And they said, okay. So that's the genesis of this book. And I'm not going to read out the authors, but they are extremely important people you all know in India. And I want to ask my friends, do you think I should read out a few names or just let it pass? Patrick. You don't know, okay. Should we? Anyway, there's Patrick, there's John Harris, there's Thomas Isaac, there is Paula Martina and Nandini Ramanujam. There is Paula Eliadis and Leela Martin. There is Rajesh Veeraraghavan. There's Shiv Vishwanathan. There is Vivek Ramkumar. There's Inayat Sabiki. There's Shalini Sengupta. There is Vipul Mudgal. There's Wajahat Habibullah and Moyuk Chatterjee in the first volume called Theory to Practice. In the second volume, you have practitioners mainly. So you have Culture and Democracy, T.M. Krishna, Social Accountability and Accountability through Decentralization, S.M. Vijayanand. From the Right to Information to People's Data Rights, Anita Gurumurthy and Nandini. C.K. Matthew wrote a piece called Desiderata. He was the ex-chief secretary of Rajasthan. Then you have a case study of Karnataka, Katyayini, who's here. She did that. And we have Mamta Jetli, writing about including the excluded. You have notes on building democracy in rural India, Kenneth Winston, building a culture of democracy brick by brick, Nikhil Day and Rakshita Swami, introducing the wisdom of pastoral peoples in India's democracy, Rosoma Thomas. I don't know if she's here today. She's in Kerala. Participatory democracy, how did it all go wrong? Shaheen Anam from Bangladesh. Then we have Right to Information, Shailesh Gandhi was Information Commissioner. Then we have Shankar Acharyalu, another information commissioner, writing, "Before Corona infected the infinite protests." Then we have Participatory Democracy and Institutional Amnesia by Tista Setalvad. And you have both Suchi and me writing a small preface and a small conclusion to both these volumes. I invite you to read them, but I would like to end now so that you can hear Patrick and Thomas, Isaac, and Vijayanand for yourselves. So I hand over to Vijay. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Dr. Patrick Heller for his remarks.
Thank you. It's an extraordinary pleasure for me to be here because, and I won't say when because then I would date myself, but I spent 2 years in this institution at CDS doing the field work for what eventually became my dissertation and eventually a book. So much of everything that I know about democratization, about development, about participatory democracy, I've learned from my time in Kerala. And my contribution to the book was to write a so-called theory piece, but I can't take any credit for the theory part of it because everything that I've written in that chapter has been inspired by the 4 people that I'm sharing this dais with. So Nikhil and Aruna's work with MKSS and designing and building and pushing through the RTI and NREGA, and then Dr. Isaac and Mr. Vijayanand for their long-standing commitments and efforts to deepen democracy in Kerala, and in particular the People's Campaign. And it's almost impossible for me to think of 4, I don't know exactly how to characterize you, as activists, as intellectuals, as politicians, as officials, but I can't think of a more extraordinary combination of individuals who across their lives and careers have been so deeply committed to the project of deepening democracy. So it's a true honor to be here. I do want to make a few general theoretical points because I think it's important to highlight and to underscore why we need to be talking about participatory democracy. Antonio Gramsci, the great social theorist, once said, "The fish never talk about the water." And in the United States in particular, we forgot to talk about democracy. And now we have a democracy in total crisis. And among other things, we simply took for granted that we had a consolidated constitutional electoral democracy, only to now discover that a president who should be in jail for having orchestrated a coup has now been reelected and is systematically and quite dramatically dismantling American democracy. And I want to argue that in part, Donald Trump, and there are others, is in a position to dismantle representative democracy precisely because we failed to invest in participatory democracy. So let me begin with sort of 3 general reasons why I think it's so essential to be discussing, as we do in these 2 volumes and as we are doing here, this idea of participatory democracy. First, it needs to be said that theories of liberal democracy or representative democracy or formal democracy, as it's called, which absolutely dominate the conversation, especially in academia, but I think also in the public sphere. So if you think about all the major political theorists, all the dominant political scientists in the United States as well as in India, they largely talk about elections, they largely talk about representation, they theorize the importance of competitive elections, all of which is absolutely essential to any democracy. But it's still an extraordinarily impoverished theory of democracy, and largely for 3 reasons. First, elections in and of themselves, as essential as they are to any democracy, are a very blunt, a very poor instrument of accountability. You know, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the great French philosopher, once said of the British, they vote every 4 years and then they live in despotism. What happens between elections is essential to the vitality of a democracy. So not having continuous accountability is a real problem. Political parties, with all due respect to those here who have spent their lives as politicians, political parties are organizations dedicated to the proposition of winning power and staying in power, which is fine for what political parties do. But even parties and state institutions have to be kept accountable. And there are formal mechanisms, the judiciary, the division of powers, but the single most important mechanism of holding state institutions and political parties to account is the vitality of civil society. And civil society can only be vital and effective if it has mechanisms, spaces, institutions through which it can hold states and parties to account. The second problem in conventional liberal democratic theory is preferences are taken for granted. It's assumed that people have certain preferences, identities, interests, etc., and they will simply vote those interests, and that the only basic function of democracy is to aggregate those interests, to generate majorities that are then the basis of rule for 4 or 5 years, whatever the mandate might be. I'm a sociologist by training. Sociologists don't believe that preferences are given. Preferences are formed. Preferences are formed through socialization, they're formed through institutions, and they're formed through public debates and deliberation. And so a vital function of democracy is creating spaces in which we can deliberate what our values are and not simply take the values and the norms and the practices of the past for granted. And again, electoral democracy in and itself is not a great mechanism of deliberation. On the other hand, local government, gram sabhas, participatory budgeting, sectoral councils, all the various mechanisms that have been developed in the last 30 years to deepen participatory democracy are much more favorable to creating environments in which preferences, interests, and ideas can actually be deliberated. The third reason I think theories of liberal democracy are incredibly impoverished is they take for granted the idea of citizenship. That is, they assume that once there are constitutional provisions to secure civic, political, and ideally social rights, that citizens enjoy those rights. But rights are not legal constructs. Rights are relational. Rights have to be practiced. In Brazil, they have an expression. They say you have to run after your rights. And of course, it's much harder for some, the marginalized, to run after and secure their rights than it is for those who are more privileged. So again, other than just voting and having constitutions, we need to think about the types of institutions, the type of mechanisms that allow ordinary and especially historically marginalized citizens to actually exercise, to use their rights, to have effective rights. The second reason I think it's now increasingly urgent to talk about participatory democracy and the kinds of democracy that build trust and that build bonds to citizens is that we live in an age of reaction. This is the most critical moment in the history of democracy since the interwar period. And as you may all recall, the interwar period in Europe produced fascism, it produced a Second World War, it produced genocide. Today, whatever measure you use, whether it's the quantitative measures of VDEM or the Freedom Index, et cetera, we're seeing more democratic regression than we've seen since the interwar period. And that democratic regression is taking the form of right-wing ethno-nationalist populist reaction. From Turkey to Hungary to the United States, Brazil under Bolsonaro, Duterte in the Philippines, and here in India, it's right-wing populist regimes that are largely hostile to the idea of participatory democracy that have come to power through democratic means. All these regimes have been elected. And so this is, to me, an extraordinary crisis of democracy. many commentators argue that these right-wing populist regimes have become more popular precisely because liberal democracy has failed. And I want to suggest that quite the opposite is true. If we think about the last 30 years, it is quite clear that there's been a quite significant consolidation and deepening of democracy in much of the global South. Latin America is the best example of this. Through the mid-80s, most Latin American countries were military dictatorships, with the exception of Colombia, with the exception of Venezuela, I should say, and Cuba. Every regime in Latin America today is a democracy, and it's a consolidated democracy. They've been democratic since the mid-80s, and there's some slippage now, but they're still electoral democracies. Moreover, we've seen a huge advance in the idea of social rights. Historically, democracies have been essentially about civic and political rights, but there's been significant advance of social rights that have been built into constitutions. We've seen this in Latin America, we've seen it in South Africa, we've seen it in East Asia. South Korea and Taiwan have become quite democratic in a continent that's otherwise largely authoritarian. And then, of course, there's the extraordinary case of South Africa that transitioned from apartheid to a robust democratic regime. And in this process of democratic consolidation and deepening, we've also seen what I call an expansion of the surface area of the state, which is a fancy way of saying there's been more decentralization. So this is true in Latin America. It's less so true in India, but very, very much true in Kerala. It's been true in South Africa as well. In other words, through decentralization, it becomes possible for citizens to engage directly with the state, with politics, with public affairs as ordinary citizens. And this is a dramatic deepening of democratization. And then the fourth element has been the advance of the welfare state. I think, especially on the left, with good reason, we've been very critical of globalization, of neoliberalism, of capitalism. But even as globalization and the dominance of capital have advanced, what we've seen at the same time over the last 3 years is an expansion of the welfare state. By every metric, social expenditures, social development outcomes such as infant mortality across the democratic global South, there's been tremendous improvement. Tremendous improvement. So I actually want to argue that what we're seeing in the rise of right-wing regimes across much of the global South and the United States is a reaction to the advances of social rights-based forms of democratic welfare of the last 30 years. Today, in the last 2 days, we've seen an assault on NREGA, and it's really startling that this is happening literally the same week that the Congress in the United States of America is dismantling Obamacare. I mean, all of MAGA, Make America Great Again, Trump's movement, is a reaction to the advances made under Obama. And I would argue a lot of this regime is a reaction to the advances made under UPA. When Bolsonaro came to power in 2018 in Brazil, right-wing, neo-fascist, racist, misogynist Jair Bolsonaro was a reaction to 12 years of the Workers' Party being in power. So the bad news is we have a reaction. The good news is the reaction is a reaction to the advances of the last 3 decades. So I want to try to end on a more positive note, because this is a difficult moment. Deepening democracy now is arguably more challenging than it's ever been. Capital is incredibly mobile, which makes it hard for taxes to tax capital and to invest in welfare. The rise of social media has, I think, pulverized and contaminated the public sphere and made it that much more challenging to actually deliberate in reasonable ways. But there are signs of hope, and I think there are signs of hope in India, but I'll let others speak to that. I want to talk to 2 examples that are close to home. One is Zoran Mamdani. And I'm sure you've heard a lot about Mamdani in India, among other things. You know, his mother is kind of famous here. But the idea that a democratic socialist Muslim who has accused Israel of genocide in Gaza could be elected mayor of the second largest Jewish city in the world and the center of global capital is mind-boggling. I mean, the word socialist in the United States is largely prescribed from our vocabulary. And yet a self-proclaimed democratic socialist is now the mayor of the world's most powerful city. And what Mamdani did, I think, carries important lessons for how we can maybe reconstruct democracy. Mamdani has done essentially three things. One is he's a left-wing populist. There's one word that drove his campaign: affordability. And if anyone here has visited New York, you'll know it's extraordinarily expensive. And for the people who live there, and especially low-income people, and low-income people make the city work, it's become unaffordable. And he has been relentless in highlighting the crisis of affordability, so much so that Donald Trump is now saying this is a Democratic hoax, which is not serving him well. He's still falling in the polls because, of course, there's no hoax to the fact that life has become increasingly expensive for working class Americans. Second of all, Mamdani has done something a lot of people believe the left can no longer do, which is talk about identity. It's often assumed that an agenda of redistribution, an agenda of addressing material needs is at odds with recognizing identity claims. Mamdani has been very forward and very direct in speaking in favor of Muslims, in ethnic communities, immigrants, LGBTQ rights, race, fighting Trump's deportation agenda of immigrants, etc. He has doubled down on identity politics while at the same time talking about redistribution. And in his case, it's not been, I think, a zero-sum game because the language he's used is the language of rights. And the language of rights applies equally to preserving and protecting identities, including marginalized and historically excluded identities, as it does to speaking the language of class and social rights. But it has to be done right. And he does happen to be an extraordinarily charismatic and talented politician. There's another example that I've already alluded to that I just want to briefly speak of before ending my comments, and that's the Workers' Party in Brazil. This is the PT, Partido de Trabalhadores, led by Inácio da Silva Lula. Lula is actually the rare president of a democratic country in Brazil. Is 200 million people. It's the third largest democracy in the world, who actually came from the working class. Lula was a union organizer. He led the great strikes of the late 70s that marked the end of the Brazilian dictatorship. And Lula is the head of I want to say, post-Leninist left-wing political party. So this is a workers' party. It's called the Workers' Party, so it's clear what its base is. But the Workers' Party actually emerged out of a range of civil society movements that included not just new forms of unionizing, but it also included the feminist movement, the anti-racism movement, the LGBTQ movement, the right to health movement, the right to the city movement. And to this day, the PT is, as far as I know, the only political party in the world that recognizes 6 different factions. It openly allows for the direct participation in party affairs of all the different movement factions that are part of its historical core. And the PT, like Mamdani, is a rather unusual alliance of the poor. So the people who vote for Lula overwhelmingly are the poor, and they're mostly Black from the Northeast. They're the social base of the PT. But what gets him a majority in cities, because most of the poor are in the Northeast, they're more rural, but in cities he does relatively well because of liberal professionals. And his appeal to them is the appeal of rights, culture, identity rights, LGBTQ, the right to the city, etc. So the alliance has been constructed around rights. And I think what both of these two cases suggest for us is that it is possible to pursue an agenda of redistribution and of economic justice, while at the same time recognizing other sources of inequality, gender, caste, race, historical forms of ethnic or cultural inclusion, and that the essential glue to this is what Jürgen Habermas calls constitutional patriotism. What holds the country together, what binds the people together, is the culture of rights, of recognizing that you have, as a citizen, inalienable rights, but the other also has rights, and you must treat the other as a rights-bearing citizen. And I emphasize this because oftentimes the left is critiqued for not really resonating culturally with the masses. It doesn't appeal to religion, it doesn't appeal to the traditional sources of solidarity. But I want to argue, and I think Kerala is actually a really good example of this, that it's possible to appeal to rights, to the Constitution, to this idea that we're all citizens in solidarity, to forge the kinds of unity that can actually drive democratic deepening. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Fella. I just recall almost 34 years ago, I found a young researcher from abroad walking into my room when I was labor commissioner to get data on labor. And I don't think ever a student from outside coming to a bureaucrat, it's a lifelong friendship. Now it's 34 years old. Now I request my teacher, then colleague, then boss, and now friend, not comrade, friend, to deliver the next step.
Thank you, Janan. I'm fully in agreement with the political characterization of our period done by Patrick Heller. We are living in an age where liberal democracy is in crisis, and an age where universally right reaction, far extreme reaction is entering the center stage. I don't have to elaborate on it. And I don't think there'll be a dispute on this. Now, what is the political economy of this transformation? I think not transformation. Why this reaction? Okay. Failure of liberal democracy, yes, it has been pointed out. But why this reaction? I think we'll have to link it with the contradiction between the nation state and the globalized capital. Democracy works within the framework of the nation state, that you cast your vote and elect your government, and then there's a procedure, various procedures by which you hold the government accountable. The ultimate would be voting them out in the election. But globalized capital does not accept nation boundaries. Even the protectionist Trump, he only protects goods movement. You see, he has absolutely no control about the flight of capital, coming in free flow of capital. You see, the moment bond prices fell, he immediately backtracked, even from his goods tariffs. So this is the key characteristic of our age of globalist capital, which does not accept the nation state boundaries. So much so, the state, whatever its ideology, will find it difficult to keep the promises made to the people. Take, for example, say, Sri Lanka, nearest to us, the new government. What were the promises? What were the slogans? But once you are there, you can't. You can afford a capital flight. Okay. So within that framework, you will have to negotiate and do what you can. Okay. there would always be an alternative possible, but you have to accept this is the framework. Now, this is this problem. The governments move to the extreme right. There is a crisis for the people. And now that is sought to be addressed or explained in terms of the other who is creating the problem for you. So this is the seed of the right reaction, which is gaining ground. The question I want to raise is, how do you fight it? Now, my argument is simple, that participatory democracy cannot be at the same level of nation state. That can be only representative democracy. If you want to move beyond representative democracy, you will have to go to the locality. That's very simple statement. Of course, RTI, and there are other instruments by which you hold the citizen can engage with the state, hold them accountable. But it's not possible to participate in the decision-making process at the national level. You can have it only through the representative. But at the local level, yes, it is possible for ordinary citizens to participate in the decision-making process. So that's where the participatory democracy blooms. And strengthening of such local institutions and framework is a bulwark, a defense mechanism against the right reaction, I hope. So greatest achievement of Kerala in the recent, say, last 3 decades would be creation of such a democratic space at the local level. I am not for a moment arguing, since the democratic space is created, everything is fine at the local level, ideal at the local level. No, that's not the argument at all. But it gives an individual, ordinary citizen, a choice. If you want to intervene to make the life better, not just yours, but the locality better, well, there is democratic space for that. An ordinary citizen cannot intervene at the national level or even the provincial level. But in your panchayat, in your Grama Sabha, in your neighborhood group, you can intervene in the decision-making process. So strengthening this participation is strengthening democracy. Okay, globalist capital moves around, but I participate in making my school education better. See, at any level of globalization, there is a scale of autonomy in which you can figure out your alternatives. The global world does not just envelop you and devour you. So, okay, I may not be able to control the prices of rubber or coconut, but I still can control the price of vegetables, the food I take to understand. I cannot control the job market, skill requirement, global employment, etc. But I can control the education I give to next generation, the hospital, how the elderly is taken care of. So there is this democratic space created. Now, decentralization per se does not bring that. You have now local governments all over, but this democratic space has to be designed, because every citizen is not equal, say, capabilities, or aspirations or desires. I may be a technical person. I am not interested in sitting in Grama Sabha and debating about this. But you want to build a road? Well, I can contribute to that. I can tell you which is a better road. So, what is important is design of local governance system in such a way that every type of citizen has some scope of intervention. So I would make a claim that the people's planning in Kerala, a conscious effort was made to make such a design. Say every sector has its working groups. Okay. Every school has its PTA. The hospital has hospital development committee. You can have, say, implementation beneficiary committees. You have voluntary technical core. Everybody is given a space, you see, design, just to be designed. Say. Now, what is the challenge? Challenge is one, over time, these tend to be routinized. A degeneration of the process do take places. There are many reasons for that. A narrow political framework which parties function, those not understanding the reason for many for the reason. But something very certain that over time degeneration take place in the processes. Now, then comes the challenge. How do you rejuvenate it? Is it inevitable that degeneration takes place? It becomes bureaucratic and democracy dies out. I don't believe so. We have to redesign. Things change. New challenges come. So, and it cannot be redesigned by now saying an order. Now instead of old PTA, you'll have new PTA types. No. You have to get the people involved so that they accept these new designs. I, for one, believe that this transformation requires people's movement here. Just like a people's campaign was required, 5 years, they know the effort that was involved, the informal education and kind of the work that was involved. Well, now 25 years have passed. Things have become routinized and everything. Still, there is space. If somebody wants to do good thing, well, there is scope for him. You want to intervene? I think best place is still in your panchayat. The possibilities and potentials are different. So now, my second argument would be that you had to reinvent, keep on reinventing. You don't reach a final setup. Okay, this is a final. People's plan just created this. This is a no. But reinvention would require a mass movement. I want to say that this has been realized earlier. A number of times attempts have been made. It can be a charismatic leader who does it, or it can be a kind of issue-based mobilization that plays. Mamdani may not be there, but it is possible. So we thought essentially that district level map integration plan can be made into a movement now. The sanitation program can be developed into a mass movement which can change now. It didn't work out. The local disaster management plans were another, but then COVID came, disrupted that. SDG movement. So it is not that it has not been attempted or thought about developing such a movement. So today, I think finally we are evolving our thoughts are coming together, making the women's agency in Kerala for such a transformation. It is partly out of the experiences that have been there at the local level in places. And what would be the immediate mobilization slogan for this? Employment. "95% of the men above the age of 25 are employed outside the house, while labor participation of women would be 25%. A mass movement of women to raise the participation to 50%. There is also an organization which could take up this challenge, Kudumbashree Network. In fact, for all other attempted failures of the movements, we had to make an effort to create a new organization which failed. So today there is an existing organization which and a slogan which will have to totally change your governance system. Why? One, the backward linkages of employment program will be local economic development. That's one of the outcome failures of Kerala's decentralization. Local economic development didn't take place that way. Surveys have been fantastic improvement. Rural assets creation, I think unparalleled. But when it comes to local economic development, we have been funding. So now employment-based women's movement, definitely it is going to have a backward linkages to a local economic development program and its forward linkages into one, the place has become safe for women to go out and work. The relation with the family would have to change and to go if so much women are to go out and work. So it raises a number of issues of gender, which gives a scope for an activist, somebody wants to intervene. Decentralization doesn't guarantee the result. It only creates the democratic space for one to intervene. Those who want to intervene, there will be this new democratic space. So you have a process challenge. See, you cannot go in the old routine. You will have to redesign things. And a huge agency of women, larger number, which will have an impact upon the local government. I'm saying this is going to succeed or not, but this is directly an attempt to make your participatory democracy more meaningful. I think you will have to, one, participatory democracy design is not going to stay put forever. You'll have to keep on reinventing it. Now, reinventing it requires kind of mass mobilization to keep up the pace so that everybody do participate. So maybe given the condition of Kerala, this would be more. All that I'm saying is democracy is not just sloganeering. Democracy is something that you have to practice in your life, in your neighborhood life, in your panchayat, in your state. That's a commitment that is demanded. And I'm happy that Aruna Roy has taken this initiative to bring together from theory to practice, a practice which happened in Kerala. I'm speaking about Kerala. But from where I think we have to move to some theoretical assessment of what happened, how could be taken forward. So thank you very much, Aruna. We are much more, you have strengthened our not only resolve, but also enlightened us perspectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Isaac. My dear friends, I don't want to get into the main scholarly debates and comments, but today, while rejoicing at this release of the book, Unpacking of Participatory Democracy, a pall of gloom descended on me because of this massacre or dismemberment of the Mahatma Gandhi Rural Employment Guarantee Act. Name has no significance, because I am a student of English literature, where what's in a name is one of the glowing quotes. But to my understanding, nothing ever named our Mahatma Gandhi has been changed, whether it be a road or a junction or a book or anything. But it's the first time Mahatma Gandhi's name has been changed. So what are the repercussions? Probably nothing. And then talking about NDNRG, I was associated it with it from day one for 10 long years. And even before that, in some conceptualization discussions, it is actually packing of democracy. NDNRGS is a packing of democracy. The Gram Sabha, the village panchayat, the worker, the rights, the vigilance and monitoring committee, practically everybody. So we need to think about it. I have no solution, but now they are saying it's allocation based, which will finish off Kerala and many states, but particularly Kerala will be hugely hit. By no norm, Kerala will get a huge amount. Then the guarantee comes with one or two fixes that says you can get employment, but we will give you so much money beyond the state will meet. So state could end up with a 2,000 crore commitment if everything goes. But nobody knows what's going to come. It's too early, just the draft bill. Then the whole huge technology fix. They're already at it. My request to Anna ma'am, Nikhil and the whole group is that how to democratize technology, because now we can't run away. Even from artificial intelligence, you can't run away. Now, all this technology I know of the ministries is to centralize further, even more centralizing. Now you know which worker is working in which village of Bihar, you can go and find out. But the worker cannot find out, the panchayat cannot find out. That's a tragedy now. So that's the only point I wanted to flag. Now we have a new set of local governments in Kerala. They will be taking office probably in 1 or 2 weeks. And what Dr. Isaac outlined, the spaces are now empty. All the spaces we created, not totally empty, but quite empty for participation, for local things. We created a lot of space. It's well structured in terms of spaces for democratic participation, democratic action, development action. So the first thing is to utilize it fully. That is not an easy order. Then going back to the old Freirean concept, I think People's Plan had some origins in that, in intellectual thing, of local analysis. Nothing is happening. So it's a councillor-based decision that this is what I want, not a participatory decision. That itself can do a lot of important things. Something which I really bemoan, but I don't think it'll ever come back. Was it to come back, it would have come back by now. One of the most innovative concepts of People's Plan, the voluntary technical core, enunciated by no less a person than EMS himself. Anybody who wants to come, now in the days of Zoom, he can help a panchayat sitting in US, and he will. There are so many such persons, but we have all turned our back, all governments, to the idea of a voluntary technical core, which can take, if they are Dr. Isaac's idea of economic development, it can be only through voluntary technical core, not only from people within Kerala, within India, from outside, who are interested in local economic development. I think we need to look at it. There was a mention of Kudumbashree. For the information of people here, the last 2 elections, nearly 65% of the elected women representatives are from the Kudumbashree background. Maybe a few percentage here and there. We hope this time also the number would be very similar. And they are in all local governments. And most interestingly, they are from all parties. So if we take BJP, Muslim League, everything, they will have a Kudumbashree member. So that's a very interesting thing. The director is not here. I have a request to see.
175 members
got elected. And the contested elections, yes. Director is not here, but I have a request to the CDS fraternity. When we were just pre-launch, I was an MPhil student here. There was a very, very visionary scheme called KRPLLD on local level development. I would now say that there should be a Kerala Action Research Project on local level development, where you go out, not you can't go out to all places, to develop models focusing on economic development. It's my personal request. I think some few crores from government may not be very difficult to get, but there are very ethical funders in India who may fund such an initiative like the Asim Premji Foundation. So that's all I have. Now I think there is a interaction is being done, but Zoom thing now. Comments of the authors. So short comments of the video comments of the authors will be heard, after which my friend Nigel will give his comments and also thank the participants.
Questions from the floor?
This is Shaheen Anam from Bangladesh. I'm so happy and excited that the publication is finally being launched, and I'm sorry not to be there. Bangladesh is at present at a critical moment. We are expecting our next election in February, and with that election, we hope all the political parties will come together to make a commitment towards participatory democracy, which is the aspiration of the people of Bangladesh. But for that to happen, civil society must play a much stronger role and create that pressure and play the watchdog role that is important for political parties and the next government that comes to power to be able to fulfill the aspiration of the people of Bangladesh.
Hello, this is Paul Eliadis, and I am speaking to you from Montreal, snowy Montreal, -5 degrees, lots of snow on the ground. I will show you. There you go. And I'm betting that it looks a little bit different where you are right now. So just to wish everybody very well, congratulations to the editors, all the authors, contributors for this book. Of course, we need participatory democracy now more than ever. It's such a timely time for this book to come out. Delighted to have contributed to this, to one of the volumes with Lucille Martin on the situation in Afghanistan, which we wrote just after the Taliban came in. Of course, these are ongoing issues, ongoing relevance in a global context that has become much more fragile. So lots of need for this book. Please all continue your great work, and all the best for a successful launch, and congratulations to everybody once again. Thanks so much.
Request, Nikhil, and after your comments, the audience may be allowed to interact with the panel.
start with, because the two people who have made contributions who are here, Katyayani, would you like to say one or two lines, because she's traveled all the way from Bangalore. Others traveled on video, but she came herself. On yeah.
From here?
So she's a contributor to the book who didn't come on video but came herself. In the spirit of participation.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. It's such an honor and privilege to be part of this book. And that too, because I have focused on the 74th Amendment for urban areas, which is not touched upon much by the other writers, I think. And that is why I feel very honored that my article has come in this paper. Of course, the book launch was delayed because of the copyright permissions that had to be obtained for my article. I'm sorry about that. But anyway, I had attended the conference 5 years ago, I think 5 or 6 years ago. And it was such an enlightening experience. And so I'm deeply, deeply honored that my article is appeared here. And I'd just like to say that 74th Amendment is not at all receiving the kind of attention that the Gram Panchayat Act or the 73rd Amendment is receiving. And that too, political will to enable urban citizens to participate because that is where all the resources are coming from, and they want to be able to control the resources and not let citizens participate in the decision making. So it has been a real struggle for us in Bengaluru to enable participatory democracy, at the ward level or in the sabhas. It's an uphill task, but somehow because of judicial interventions in Karnataka, we've had very good chief justices who have helped us to strengthen urban local governance by giving very good orders, which we are using to enable cities across Karnataka to participate in ward committees and area sabhas. So thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks to Aruna Roy for giving
Almost 9 years back.
Sorry.
Almost 9 years back. Not 6.
So I'd just like to say, I don't know. I mean, I'm another person who's a contributor, part contributor, and have traveled all the way here. So I guess that gives me some right to speak. But I think, again, I'd like to say one line each, actually, or a little bit about each one of the people here on this dais. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for the few people who are here to be able to hear these 4 people on any event. So let's say the excuse is this, or let's say that this has managed to once again bring people of this quality in this kind of institution together. That itself is something quite amazing. So I think let's give them a hand. So honestly, now, and I say this in also a time when it is a very dark and sad time, not just over the last 2 days, but what happened with the right to information in the last month, because it got notified and it's got completely emasculated, the amendment to the RTI, which has destroyed it, and a lot of us need to learn. I think this academic institution needs to understand what the implications of DPDPA, the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, is. We are in an era of lawfare, literally warfare through law. And that is what is happening in one law after the other. We had an era of rights-based laws. We have an era now of the opposite happening. And that's something we need to understand. Just as we understood what entitlements could be put into a law, what a law can do to criminalize us, to make us terrorists, to make us Andolan Jivis, that's all things that I think we need to understand. Patrick's, I mean, what happened, and it's a continuing story. I think participation is as inherent as anything else. And I think, Patrick, I'd just like to pick up on Lula, and not just Lula, but the Labour Party, the Workers' Party in Brazil. And I'm part of something called Progressive International, and I've traveled there because it's a part of that whole framework. And it's extraordinary how much we really need to learn about how each one of what we call mass organizations, be they unions, women's groups, church groups, people who are organizing groups, getting into the whole framework from bottom to top of democratic participatory governance. And that's where, I mean, I am a great admirer of Kerala's People's Plan model. So are all of us all over the country. And we have, again, 2 stalwarts sitting here, and I don't know how many more stalwarts sitting there of that whole program. I know we brought some people who were just activists with the MKSS and came and spent 10 days and went back to become fantastic sarpanchas because their whole imagination changed from understanding that. But I think you alluded to it when you say participation can only be done, Dr. Thomas Isaac, at the local level. I have a question. RTI is an assertion of participation at the highest level. To ask the Prime Minister, to ask the Chief Minister, uncomfortable questions. And there, it's not just the RTI. Our laws that we created again, the NREGA, brought participation at various levels through a participatory process of lawmaking. The making of laws itself can be so much more participatory. So that, yes, absolutely, it has to be a warp and weft of representative democracy and participatory democracy. But I don't think we can end only at local self-government. I think we have to go to every level, and that's where we find the resistance, the possible resistance, because I don't think the story of Narega is over. I think so many people, the 15 crore households who have come, out of them, we will get a critical mass that will push back against what has been done from top down. And that's the story of democracy, I feel. And Mr. Vijay Anand's feeling sad. I mean, I would like to say that I honestly feel that we are in a test match where one innings is going very badly, undoubtedly. But I think perhaps we have all our wickets are going, but we have our chance to bowl as well. And that bowling has to come from people. It has to come from a mass participatory exercise. We did have a chapter, an extremely interesting chapter of those rights-based legislations and laws. We had an extremely interesting chapter of the People's Plan exercise in Kerala. One thing I completely agree with Dr. Thomas Isaac is that what we participate in has to be institutionalized. It's not merely a slogan. It's not just Hamara Paisa, Hamara Hisab. It is how I can ask that question. Out of that question, where do I manage to say what I do? Where do I manage to get redress of grievances, but an intervention in policy? That institutionalization, you both of you perfected, not just you, with the people here in Kerala on local self-government. I think there's lots of space available for us to be able to do it. But I'd like to end with how wonderful this whole exercise of bringing out these 2 books were. Reducing them to print is I think a bad thing to say here, but you lose so much of what went into this. I had the privilege of being in Aruna's class, which was a totally participatory class, completely. And she brought, I'll just give a little incident. I know I'm speaking too long, but she brought in her first class you were talking about technology. First class, she brought Northi Bai from her village in Harmada into her class talking about minimum wages in McGill University. And it was a fantastic session across language, across this, across that. That every class she brought someone from India into her class. One session out of those 2 hours. So much so because she was doing it on Skype. The Skype people got to hear in that huge McGill University and came to her and said, will you speak about how wonderful Skype is? Which of course she didn't, because that's how technologists who make these technologies function. But from there to how much those students ran that first workshop in McGill. And then what happened here was less a seminar, was less a convention. It was really a festival of thoughts. And it was wonderful how much both the government, the institutions, the various issues that went with it, the people who helped organize, many of them who are here, and visiting, going and looking at Kerala, the people from Kerala saying, no, it's not so great as you think it is. All that is a festival, I think, of where we must be able to use people's energies because they're willing to give it. They don't want money. They don't want anything else. They want to be a part of this whole process. Their resistance is, of course, fabulous in many ways. And I think in that sense, what Aruna managed to do, and thank you, Aruna, for that, and Suchi for that, is that the rest of us, we celebrate and we don't put it into books. We just carry on till the next celebration or the next discussion or the next whatever. I think the fact that you got after a whole lot of people and said and kept chasing them and put together and the who's who of what you read in those books. Yes. And found this kind of who will chase who till you catch the tag, catch them and get hold of it. I think behind these books, that story is also a great story of participatory bringing out of volumes. So, sorry, yeah, she's supposed to say the vote of thanks right at the end, but we have to do
some interaction after
exactly.
that.
Yeah, so
I just want to be, just one. My vignette for the Kerala, the Trivandrum seminar, my vignette, I mean, there were many, but the one that just rides right on the top was when we went for the village visit. Professor Thomas Isaac, Finance Minister, and Mr. S.M. Vijayanand, Chief Secretary, came to the stage and said, look, you're going to the village. This is my language, but the gist of what they said, you're going to the village, you're going to the panchayat, everything is not okay, something will be missing, but come back and do tell us what's wrong so that we can work on it. Now that's a healthy government. And for all of us who heard them that day, it was a spectacular statement because in our states, no minister is going to go on stage and tell us, if you find something wrong, come back and tell us. No chief secretary is going to accept that there's anything wrong in the state. So it told me a lot about Kerala and about participation, about the participatory system, and about the mindset of both the people who hold power and the people who face power. So it was fantastic. So I want to thank them for that vignette. They never knew that I thought that day.
If you want to ask any question or comments, yeah, please.
Can you introduce yourself? Okay. This is NSK. I'm from Sri Lanka, but I'm based in Japan. I have been living in Japan for last 10. Okay, my name is Kure. I'm professor at International University of Japan. I have been living there for 35 years. Originally, I'm from Sri Lanka. And I was invited by IAS to be there for 1 month. And taking that opportunity, I came to Kerala to learn how this participatory democracy or rural development is happening. So I'm just staying few days at this place, CDS. And I was so impressed with the way that you people have explained how things are happening in Kerala. And in fact, I had a dream of visiting Kerala because I remember that Amartya Sen, great economist that India had produced, always comparing Kerala and Sri Lanka.
So I wanted to see what this Kerala mean. So I am really happy to see that, you know, the whole story of development of Kerala, I can see from the stage, the 5 people who are sitting here. In fact, I wanted to speak to some of you after the meeting. I just have to mention that I have very impression of the book. I bought already the book. I'm look forward to reading that. Thank you so much. I don't have any other comments except appreciating your hard work. Thank you so much.
My name is Rosama. I'm a freelance journalist. I just had one question, please, because I now live in Kerala after several years of living outside Kerala in other states of the country. Now that I'm back, I came back in 2021, and at that time, we could go into the government office and ask for, redressal of grievances was through face-to-face encounters with people. But now that we have K-Smart, everything has gone online, and it's become like the people who man the front desk just feel so completely helpless. And we had one speaker say we can't do without technology. AI is a reality. I just want to plead that maybe we don't need technology in certain spheres, and we should let face-to-face encounters continue for as much as possible. And also, if it's eating up jobs and all that, it makes no sense to computerize a lot of these procedures. So that's just a plea. Thank you.
Rosama is also a contributor in case you want to say anything of that process. We forgot.
Yeah, I was at that point, I had lived in Rajasthan for some time, and my contribution has to do with pastoral communities. So I was just thinking that, we have migrant workers and issues that they face here, but the people who are traditionally accustomed to migration, we are also making it very hard for them, destroying their temporary sheds where they keep their cattle and all of that. So I think those who have been migrating across generations and who have developed a lifestyle around it, they are facing problems, and settled communities are now beginning to migrate. So it's all quite problematic. Yeah, thanks.
Actually, I was supporting your view that technology should be democratized, means now technology people can't use. It becomes faceless. That face thing is very much required particularly in local governments.
No, what I was trying to suggest is that we don't need technology. There are areas of our life we can keep technology free.
Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak something about the rate of decentralization in Kerala. Of course, it is a great contribution that our participatory planning process has been adopted by other states and even the neighboring countries such as Nepal, Bhutan, and Sri Lanka. But at present, it is in a period of stagnation. On one side, the bureaucratic or political level thinking that what is enough and more. And the elected members, they are thinking that they are observing that this is enough. We don't go further. So we need these two aspects. Decentralization in a stagnation stage. There is no discussion at all there because decentralization or the local government system got strengthened because of continuous intervention and continuous discussions. And the national level, a lot of discussions under the auspices of the Ministry of Panchayat Raj. Now there is nothing. In the state of Kerala also, we can see all the good reports are kept in cold storage. So there is no intervention, there is no discussion, there is no decision making from the side of the authorities to make the system more vibrant. So at this juncture, at this point of discussion, I had to tell the authorities discussion, wide interaction, and give more power modes and functions to the local level to strengthen our democracy and make it other is true because the Southeast Asian is observing Kerala to see how it is moving ahead. So it is everybody's duty. The lovers of decentralization, I can say the word, use the word, lovers of decentralization. They should not keep idle. We have to strengthen the system further. Thank you.
Mr. Vijayanath, there's one request which has come from Sir Shailesh Gandhi. He wants to say a few words. Can we ask him? Yeah.
I hope you know, in people's planning period, he was the Panchayat president in one of the Panchayats in Kannur. Then he has been the director of Kila, he has become the central government. And I agree with you. There is a stagnation. How to break out of this stagnation? Recreate it again. People's plan cannot be repeated. That's a different age. And that's why we need to think about different agency, the different type of movement. But to break this bureaucratic grip and so on, you need the creativity of the movement. That's what I'm convinced about.
Maybe can is there? Yeah, please.
My namaskar to my gurus, Aruna and Nikhil. India is becoming a defective elective democracy. We call it a democracy because we have elections. Beyond that, democracy does not survive. Right to information was a great instrument contributed by MKSS, but it's now becoming a right to deny information. And I wish we could do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you. You're the former information commissioner.
Yes. So my name is Hamid and I'm a master's student here at CDS. So I wanted to kind of ask you for a comment regarding the role of education. So like, as you have rightly pointed out, that two major crises that the liberal democracy is facing is, one is rising inequality, which Dr. Isaac alluded to. And the second is the entire discourse around rights, about who's getting rights. That's being a bit changing with the rise of with the rise of ethno-nationalist tendencies in various countries across the globe. So my question is like, so what is the role of education in this, in promoting the kind of rights-based education and trying to foster that sense of, okay, we are all part, we have all the same rights. And the second is developing capabilities. Like, it has been noticed, and I guess most of the people here can find examples more closer to home, that education, the cost of education has been continuously rising with each passing year. So what are the plans, and like, how does this impact democracy in the terms of capability, and second, in the terms of that entire rights-based discourse, if a significant part of the population is being excluded to education? So I would like to know your comments about this. Thank you.
I can respond to part of the question. We live in an information-based economy. Statistically, 70% of the global economy is now services, and the most high-end services are information-driven. And the greatest scarce resource in the world today is education. And I actually think the rise of a lot of these reactionary regimes is a reaction to the democratization of education. I mean, if you think about the rise of right-wing populism in India, it really begins with the Mandel Commission and opposition to expanding quotas for lower castes for access to higher education. In Brazil, there's no doubt that Bolsonaro, who came out of nowhere, was able to defeat the Workers' Party candidate because the upper, mostly white middle class in Brazil was infuriated by the fact that Lula opened universities to Black and brown people. In Brazil, they have an expression, the whites have an expression, they say our airports are beginning to look like bus stations. And that's what they think about higher education. It's the same in the United States. It's politically, it's a little bit more complicated, but the resentment of the people who support Trump is the resentment of downwardly mobile, less educated white men who feel that they've been excluded from the benefits of higher education. So I think education is the great stake in the current global struggle around democracy. Of course, to advance capabilities and to advance rights, you have to have universal high quality education. We know from East Asia, from Scandinavia, that universal primary education is good for a lot of things, economic growth, greater inclusion, more democratization. But by the same logic, it's a very scarce resource. And when there are demands from below for access to education, that produces reaction. And that's what we're seeing in the world today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, each of these right-wing reaction in India and abroad target education. I don't think there are many institutions today in India where we can have a discourse like this. Yeah. Our most esteemed institutions, people are so afraid to have a seminar. Somebody on decentralization, for a seminar, is asked to speak in TIS. The dean was removed. This is the level that we have come. So, one, education is a big target by every reaction. Secondly, rights, you have to be aware of the rights. Otherwise, how do you have a rights movement? Therefore, part and parcel of this rights movement will be informal education of the rights to the people. And that becomes very important. Look at any of this movement, informal education is a very, very important component, teaching the people their rights. So, one, the reaction tries to snuff it out. So, it may not be possible in the formal education sector carry through, but we can always continue in the informal sector.
I just want to add a couple of things to your statement because I live with the young people who aspire to get degrees. Now, I would differentiate between schooling, getting degrees, and education. Education is much greater, deeper, gives you the right, as Professor Thomas Isaac said, to disagree, to dissent, to argue. How many colleges and schools in this country allow you that? And if you step a little behind that, what does our curriculum look like now? Look at the school curriculum. All liberal thought has been expunged from it. Raja Ram Mohan Roy, you can't read about it. Read about him. You can't read about the Middle Ages. All Mughal India is out. You can't mention, for instance, that Gandhiji was assassinated by Godse. You cannot. I mean, what kind of history are you teaching our children? No wonder they're turning out the way they are. So we have to step back and look at curriculum. We have to fight for curriculum. We have to fight all the way. There are many battles in this education system that we have to fight. And also we do have different grades of education. If it's education and even different grades of degrees and schooling we give our people and our young. Engineers who can't do any engineering job come out of engineering institutions. People who get doctor's degrees don't know how to doctor. So we have that entire system of fraud education, fraud degrees. So it's a massive problem. I think, it really needs emergency attention. And then, of course, there are all these coaching shops. Kota, I come from Rajasthan. Kota is notorious. Children don't go to formal school. They go to these coaching institutions and they coach you for IIT, for IAS, for IIM, for everything. And that's the end of the, it's not learning. It's just passing an exam that they're preparing you for. So I think it's a very important question, but it needs a whole seminar. So I'll stop here. Thank you for raising it.
Yes. Yeah, so Professor Pravina will say the thanks. I just before that, that's it. Yeah. We want to thank CDS for giving us the space, space in just the way that Professor Thomas Isaac said, that the space to host and nest these kinds of discussions. We hope in perpetuity for many other such things, we'll also get a chance, and we've learned so much from this institution. But for us to be able to do this here, the specific people from here, we don't know. I do want to thank all those who could not be here. We have had this special opportunity to come once again to Trivandrum, again with the excuse of releasing the book. We had several excuses in between, including the time of when we had that seminar. It would have been great if we could have called everyone back again for another seminar to release the book, at least those participating in it. We have to thank those who came online, those who could not be here but have written in saying it's great that it's coming out, those who joined online, those who are here on stage and who have given us room for another, at least 4 articles more that can be written on the thoughts that you put forward. Seriously, these are all, each one of the things that each one of you said, I think can be further developed. And there are many people here who would be happy to, I'm sure, keep talking to you in any case. And most of all, we want to thank CDS. So we do want to thank Suchi, who's far away, who's not here, and Aruna together. So I think let's give them a hand, because had it not been for them, all that whole thing would not have happened and we would not have been here. But now if Professor Pravina could specifically on our behalf and her behalf, thank the people who have allowed us to come together here.
I agree. But before I do that, now that I have the mic, I have a plea to Professor Isaac on that issue that you were talking about, women's employment being an issue on which you could build a campaign. I would like to invite you to think a little further with us on why is women's employment so low in Kerala? Why is women's work participation so low in Kerala? I've done 2 research studies, one with higher educated women in Kerala who are struggling to work. They want to work, they want to be part of the labor market, but they're finding it so difficult to take care of particularly childcare and be employed. So it breaks their careers. That's one. I've also done field work with migrant women, very poor, who are coming from the north and eastern states, who cannot but work, and their children are not going to school because they cannot monitor their children. Now, what this tells me is that the big gap there is care infrastructure. We do not have, we are compared with Scandinavia. What we lack, what we don't have is that care infrastructure. We need the care infrastructure for the women who want to work, are unable to, and for the women who are working but cannot take care of their children. So to then say that we must mobilize around employment is a very, we're missing the really key problem over there. So that's a thought that I have. Now
we cannot answer those in auto thanks time, but we'll have a discussion, full-fledged discussion.
Yeah. Okay. With that, I couldn't resist it. With that, let me.
There is a book, it is in Malayalam, but still, which is used as a test. I'll send you a copy of that.
Thank you. So, I mean, now that I'm going to be thanking, let me start with thanking the panel. I mean, we're really happy to have had you here and had this really vibrant set of presentations and also the discussion. So thank you to Aruna Roy and Suchi Pande for coming all the way. I mean, Suchi, of course, online, but Aruna for making taking the trouble to come here and be with us. Professor Patrick Heller, who we've had here before, online also. You gave one of our lectures recently. Thank you so much. Professor Isaac, who is one of us. He is here occasionally, and we're very happy to have him back. Mr. Vijayanan, who's also one of us. I mean, he's been an alumni, but also been part of many of our committees. So thank you, Nikhil. Thank you so much for coming. I'm also called upon to thank my own staff members who put in a lot of work here to make this a reality. Ajay, Emmanuel, I don't see them here. Aji Kumar and Praveen, they were the people who really put in all the hard work. I hope they, all the hard work paid. I know our infrastructure is crumbling in parts, but I hope you all were comfortable. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's all.